People who know little are usually great talkers, while men who know much say little. I prefer liberty with danger than peace with slavery. Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. The world of reality has its limits, the world of imagination is boundless. The first man who, having enclosed a piece of ground, bethought himself of saying this is mine, and found people simple enough to believe him, was the real founder of civil society. From how many crimes, wars and murders, from how many horrors and misfortunes might not anyone have saved mankind, by pulling up the stakes, or filling up the ditch, and crying to his fellows, beware of listening to this impostor, you are undone if you once forget that the fruits of the earth belong to us all, and the earth itself to nobody. I know the feelings of my heart, and I know men. I am not made like any of those I have seen. I venture to believe that I am not made like any of those who are in existence. If I am not better, at least I am different. Whether nature has acted rightly or wrongly in destroying the mold in which she cast me, can only be decided after I have been read. I would rather be a man of paradoxes than a man of prejudices. To be sane in a world of madmen is in itself madness. Why should we build our happiness on the opinions of others, when we can find it in our own hearts? Every person has a right to risk their own life for the preservation of it. To write a good love letter, you ought to begin without knowing what you mean to say, and to finish without knowing what you have written. Those that are most slow in making a promise are the most faithful in the performance of it. Or, rather, let us be more simple and less vain. Civilization is a hopeless race to discover remedies for the evils it produces. Man was born free, and he is everywhere in chains. Those who think themselves the masters of others are indeed greater slaves than they. Every man having been born free and master of himself, no one else may under any pretext whatever subject him without his consent. To assert that the son of a slave is born a slave is to assert that he is not born a man. All my misfortunes come of having thought too well of my fellows. I have never thought, for my part, that man's freedom consists in his being able to do whatever he wills, but that he should not, by any human power, be forced to do what is against his will. They say that Caliph Omar, when consulted about what had to be done with the library of Alexandria, answered as follows: "If the books of this library contain matters opposed to the Koran, they are bad and must be burned. If they contain only the doctrine of the Koran, burn them anyway, for they are superfluous." Our learned men have cited this reasoning as the height of absurdity. However, suppose Gregory the Great was there instead of Omar and the Gospel instead of the Koran. The library would still have been burned, and that might well have been the finest moment in the life of this illustrious pontiff. I perceive God everywhere in his works. I sense him in me, I see him all around me. In respect of riches, No citizen shall ever be wealthy enough to buy another, and none poor enough to be forced to sell himself. Everything is good as it comes from the hands of the Maker of the world, but degenerates once it gets into the hands of man. In truth, laws are always useful to those with possessions and harmful to those who have nothing, from which it follows that the social state is advantageous to men only when all possess something and none has too much. There are times when I am so unlike myself that I might be taken for someone else of an entirely opposite character. To live is not to breathe, but to act. It is to make use of our organs, our senses, our faculties, of all the parts of ourselves which give us the sentiment of our existence. The man who has lived the most is not he who has counted the most years, but he who has most felt life. I hate books, they only teach us to talk about things we know nothing about. Trust your heart rather than your head. The truth brings no man a fortune.